Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jazziz Daily Brunch. I am your host, Brian Zimmerman, digital content editor for Jazziz Magazine, and thank you so much for joining me today. We are well into May at this point, a weekend. I guess I am just letting the Corona whiskers grow. I didn't plan on it. It was not a coronavirus beard kind of deal, but this is just the state of things in the Zimmerman household right now. It is May, and I just want to mention before we get into our show that our May digital issue is available now to subscribers. And Jeff, you want to go ahead and pull this up? Chock full of good content, wide-ranging interview with Bob James, keyboardist Bob James, a smooth and contemporary jazz progenitor is the feature story, but we've got a lot of stuff in here. Most of it is for subscribers only, but there are pieces in there that you can certainly read if you'd like to become a subscriber and get great access to all this content. Just do so on our homepage, jazziz.com. We're offering a very special offer right now where for just 99 cents per month for 3 months, you can unlock all this digital access, access. Plus you're enrolled in to receive our next print issue, which is coming out in June. So yeah, this issue will be in subscribers' inboxes this Friday, but they can already start taking a peek at it online. It's a really cool issue. We're very proud of it. And if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and become one. If you want to just sign up for our newsletter so you can get these digital issue alerts, you can do that on our homepage as well. There it is. Try 3 months for just 99 cents per month. Thanks, Jeff. I'm very excited to be talking to our guest today. He is really a hero of mine when it comes to jazz guitar, and you can't mention modern jazz guitar without mentioning his name. He's John Scofield, okay? And he's played with everybody from Miles Davis, Billy Cobham. He has put out some excellent leader albums of his own, pairing with musicians like Pat Metheny and Larry Coryell, John Abercrombie. He's had some long-standing partnerships with Joe Lovano, including a slew of really superb albums on the Blue Note label. He is about to release his debut leader as an album for ECM. It's called Swallow Tales, and it's coming out on June 5th, and it is a tribute to his friend and longtime colleague, Steve Swallow, on the bass. So we're going to be talking to him about the new album, about all those career highlights in just a minute here. But first, I want to take a minute to thank some of this episode's sponsors. They include Concord Jazz. Their new album is Ella 100, live at the Apollo. It's available now for streaming and purchase. And this is a live recording from 2016 featuring performances by the likes of Andrew Day, Ledisi, Liz Wright, Cassandra Wilson, and Monica Mancini, not to mention the absolutely swinging Count Basie Jazz Orchestra led by Scotty Barnhart. It was hosted by Grammy Award winner Patty Austin and Tony Award nominated actor David Allen Greer, and it is available now. Stream it, pick it up for yourself at concord.com. Thanks also to Blue Sound Audio. So Blue Sound is an award-winning wireless high-res sound system that lets you play music in any and every room throughout your home. You just choose music from your favorite streaming service or from a music library connected to your home network. Control where, at what volume, and when the music plays with a free Blue OS app for your smartphone, tablet, or desktop computer. And that's it. Getting the kind of crisp and detailed sound that only an audiophile-grade system can deliver has never been easier. That is how you live hi-fi, folks. You can learn more at bluesound.com or by checking out our website, jazziz.com, where we have put together a Blue Sound buyer's guide. It'll also be in our summer 2020 issue. Anyway, without further ado, that does it for sponsors. That does it for my little intro. Let's go ahead and bring our very special guest to the brunch, Mr. John Scofield. Hey, John.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Very good.
Nice. Yeah, as good as we can during these times. How you been holding up? How you been keeping busy? How you been staying sane?
It's crazy. I don't think I've been home this long since 1974, but wow. It's been great to be home in that way, despite the awful situation. And I'm okay, but I feel bad for all the people that aren't. I'm able to stay. I play guitar all the time and walk the dog. It's been nice, but I feel guilty about even saying that.
No, I know.
So many others hurting so badly.
Yeah, and our good vibes, our thoughts go out to them. But you're right, the silver lining in this for a lot of us in this industry, for musicians who are traveling all over places, we get to be home. I get to be with my daughter. I have watched Frozen 2 God knows how many times. But
Frozen to, yeah, no, I know my granddaughter has got that memorized along with it. Know it by heart as well.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So, John, the new album is great, man. Swallowtails. I've been spinning it a lot. And it was cool to me, you know, so often when we think of tribute albums or albums, you know, from one artist dedicated to another, it's from an artist of another generation, long past. It must have been really cool to put together a tribute album for your friend and your longtime bandmate, Steve Swallow.
Right. Yeah, it just seemed really natural to do it because I love the songs. I played with Steve and known him as long as I've known almost anybody since 72, I guess, when I met him when I was 20. And he was, an old man at 31. I thought he was and so anyway, to do it was easy because I knew the tunes. I'd been studying his tunes and learning them just like everybody, right?
Right.
Since then. And, thinking of another way to play with the trio, I think, why not just do all Steve's music?
And it says a lot about your, character and your generosity as a musician, because this is your ECM leader debut, we should mention.
Yeah.
So how did Steve react when he says, hey, I'm debuting, you say, I'm debuting on ECM. I want to do all your tunes, man.
Well, he said, don't do that. He said, no, we should play your music. Yeah. He's so humble, or just, sort of thing like, really, you want to do that? Yeah. But I really wanted to do it because, even in our trio, which has played for many years now with Bill Stewart.
Bill Stewart on drums.
And on gigs, we would play his tunes, and we hadn't recorded them. They'd all been recorded by other artists over the years. And we didn't know it was going to be on ECM. I just booked some studio time, and we went in and just did it. And then I liked the way it came out, and I went to send it to Manfred Eicher, and he said, "Okay, I'll do it."
Nice. And you called it old school recording, just in there, few takes, I assume, just playing and getting it on tape.
The thing was, we knew the music, right? So we had played it. Maybe there were a couple of tunes that Bill, the drummer, hadn't played, but he's so quick, it was easy. And the studio that we used, none of us really liked the way the playback sounded in that studio. So for that reason, and also because we didn't need to, we didn't listen to playbacks. We just played a couple of takes of each tune. The whole thing was over in 4 hours. We had a great engineer, Tyler McDermott, who is wonderful. And he said, it's coming through all right, and we'll be able to work with this. So we did it in 4 hours, played all the tunes. Then Tyler took it home and mixed it and sent it to me. And I said, oh, it was pretty good.
More than pretty good, John, man. You captured some magic there for sure. We should mention, for people who may not be as familiar with Steve Swallow, this was a bass player who was a very early adopter of the electric bass, one of the first to transition from playing acoustic to electric. It would have been what, the 60s?
Late 60s, he started playing electric bass. It was a pre-Jocko world.
Right. It really was. And in a lot of ways, he was an innovator on that instrument. Did you ever, I'm sure you've talked about why he decided to go full electric and really hasn't looked back. I know he does a lot of acoustic stuff.
He was one of the best and most popular and busy upright jazz bass players in New York, and he saw electric bass as the music of the future. It was the very beginning of fusion music when he started the electric bass in the late 60s with the Gary Burton Quartet. So it's the very beginning of people sort of putting rock stuff in. And he liked, like everybody with ears, he liked the Beatles and what was happening in rock and roll and was aware of that. I mean, but Steve had been one of the best upright players with Art Farmer and Stan Getz and Art, Jim Hall and Paul Bley, and made all these. He was one of the very best guys. And at around 1970, I guess, he decided to just play electric bass. He thought it was the instrument of the future.
And lest you think that Steve Swallow's electric playing is all tinny and electric, it is absolutely not. He has a gorgeous tone on this instrument.
Yeah, he approaches it differently from anybody. And when I say post-Jocko, I see that as the developing line, you know, of the instrument, how it's developed, and he put his style together and got on in his direction before that. So
right.
With a pick, he plays an acoustic instrument now that it has pickups in it. You know, it's an electric bass, but it's really resonating, you know, arch top bass guitar.
Right. Does playing, you've played with some very fine acoustic players. Does playing with an electric player of, you know, Steve's caliber obviously change the way you interact from a, you know, musical guitaristic?
I see it as just a really good jazz player. You know, most electric bass players, God bless them, don't spend a whole lot of time swinging, you know. And I play with a lot of electric players that are just great in another genre of music, you know, and we play that music, but we don't try and play standards and stuff, you know. And then I play with other guys who play both electric and upright, you know. Right. And he switched to upright for the jazz stuff. But Steve went another way. He said, I'm just going to play one instrument because I want to concentrate on that. He won't play the upright bass. One time we had a gig recently, and there was an upright bass backstage. We're hanging in the dressing room. I finally got him to like play like a blues with me. There was an acoustic guitar, and it sounded great. And I said, Steve, and then he said, nope, never again. But Steve can just swing and play all his jazz stuff on the electric bass. He brought his acoustic bass playing to the electric bass and never looked back.
Right on. And you are also very well known for your tone. You play the Ibanez, still on the Ibanez, right?
Yeah, still on.
That is modeled after a 335?
Yeah,
it is.
It's
very cool.
Of a 335. The Japanese companies, especially Ibanez, in the 70s into the 80s were copying Gibsons and Fenders,
which
and great instruments. So
totally.
That's what I went for it early 82. They gave me my first guitar.
I have played your what is the artistic model? That's a nice axe, man.
Yeah, the Artcore, but
Artcore.
Mine is the what the hell is it? AS200. That's the one I play. But there's a John Scofield model that they've been making for the last 10 years that is based on the old Ibanez that I play. And
Grant Green famously played a 335, right?
Played a 330.
A 330, right.
With single coil pickups. A little different instrument, but it's similar.
Such a unique tone. I'm just trying to get at tone here. You know, were there players you grew up listening to who you idolized just for their tone?
With blues. And my first big idol was B.B. King.
All right.
And, you know, I had solid body guitars as a kid trying to play like that. And then I got into jazz and I got an arch top and had a 175, you know, and doing that, trying to play modern jazz. And I loved Jim Hall, Wes Montgomery. Still do. But then I got the gig with Billy Cobb's band. It was my first really big time steady gig in 1975. I joined his group. And so I thought, well, I'll buy a B.B. King kind of guitar, you know? And so I bought a 330, actually. I didn't know the difference. And went to the first rehearsal. That didn't work. It was just, the music was too loud. So I started playing a solid body with that band. And then when I went back to playing more acoustic jazz, I thought the in-between thing would be the, semi-hollow guitar. The 335. And so I started to play those, and it worked out because from rock and roll and whatever that guitar sound is, I like the distortion, and overdrive a little bit, you know, so you could get more of a vocal sound. It seemed like that kind of guitar could do that.
It is the perfect medium, and it really shines, you know, on the new album, especially in Steve Swallow's compositions. I love what you said about Steve Swallow's compositions in the press materials. You said the changes are always interesting, but not too interesting. Yeah. You know, as in the complexity.
The jazz curse, student curse. Right. You write this ridiculously great tune that you love, but it's unplayable for everything.
Right. I call it practice room jazz because it only sounds good in the practice room. Yeah. And I love what you said. It's the complexity, you know, and these songs are really nuanced, complex, but it does not distract from the song itself, you know, the melody.
Yeah, they're real songs. Yeah.
Right. You hear a lot of tunes written, odd meters, weird chord progressions, almost just like people wanted to put a puzzle together.
You know, it's just, to me, it's kind of immature. You know, it's like, you know, you're learning about jazz, you're learning about this complicated music, and and you want to write some interesting stuff, but there's something else going on in music that we love,
Yeah.
and so it's really hard to write something that's interesting and somewhat playable.
Yeah. And Steve's tunes do it. Great titles too. I love Awful Coffee. That's I think that may be one of my favorite tunes on the disc.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I didn't write it. Steve did.
Well, let Steve know. Yeah. We mentioned it is your ECM leader debut. You had been on ECM before. When we talk about ECM, there's definitely, a sound, an aesthetic, and a lot of that has to do with Manfred Eicher, the founder and chief engineer over there. I'm curious, listening back in your own listening history, what were some favorite ECM albums for you?
Well, I like all the classics, like everybody. Before I first met Steve, I went to the Berklee School of Music, and in 1971 in the fall, Gerry Burton came to teach there. And I was lucky because the guys I roomed with were much better than me, the drummer and the bass player. And we had an apartment that had a set of vibes there because the drummer had vibes too. So Gerry befriended us. He said, there's this rhythm section I can go jam with, because when he would be done teaching, traffic would be so bad in Boston, he'd wait a couple of hours before he hit the road. He'd come jam with us like all the time. It was amazing.
Wow.
And I could hardly play, but I got to play with Gerry a lot then. And one day he brought over a test pressing of Crystal Silence, which was he said, I made this record for this German record company that nobody had heard of at the time, or I hadn't. They were very, under the radar.
Yeah.
In 1972, 70, around then, 72, and he had just made this record, which is one of my favorite ECM records, Crystal Silence, with Gerry and Chick Corea in duet.
Oh yeah.
They played Falling Grace, Steve Swallows too, and he said, and I've got these other records that the producer in Germany gave me. One was Facing You, Keith Jarrett.
Yeah.
And these records, the sound was completely different. It had, I guess you would almost call it a classical music approach to the recording, the way the piano sounded, and the reverb. And,
space.
And it was so incredible. And I remember loving that. And then Gerry said, oh, that record producer is coming to town. Would you guys go pick him up at the airport in your student car? And because I can't do it, I'm teaching. So we met Manfred Eicher in 1973 or something.
Wow.
In Boston. We picked him up. He came over to our little student place. We listened to records waiting for Gerry to stop teaching. I'll never forget it. And then I didn't see Manfred until the 80s, again. But he is, I can't think of anybody else who's really promoted some really great music and recorded it in a way nobody else had before.
Very unique sonic footprint. Oh, producer Jeff, are we getting some echo there? That might be me, or maybe that's just me. There it goes.
Reverb. That's what ECM.
That's what ECM is all about. It was the ECM gods shining down on us. Yeah, I've heard the best thing I've heard is you plug in your headphones and it's like listening to a cloud. It's just so misty and spacious. And yeah, man, it's great to see you on the label. As we mentioned, we'll say it again. It's out June 5th. It's called Swallow Tales. It's you, Steve Swallow, Bill Stewart. There it is. Oh, we got product, man. Very nice. Very nice. I believe one or two singles are out at the moment too, so you can
they do this thing where they put it out on Spotify and on YouTube and stuff. You can hear one song.
Right.
I think only one has come out, and another one's going to come out next week or something. And then the record comes out June 5th.
Right on, man. Well, we are going to take a quick break to thank some sponsors, and then I'd love to get into some career highlights. Take it back to the beginning for you, John. But let me just quickly say thank you to Mac Avenue Records. They have been putting us on the road to great music for more than 20 years now. You can start spinning some of their stuff right now. Check out the latest album by saxophonist Jimmy Green. It is called While Looking Up. Really good music, really inspiring. Or maybe if you're into it, hey, check out the new Tower of Power album, Step Up. They are both available now to stream, to order. For more info, check out macavenue.com. Thanks also to Smoke Sessions Records, a great label based out of Manhattan. Their latest album is The Intangible In Between from Orrin Evans and the Captain Black Big Band. Orrin Evans is the pianist and the latest member of the Bad Plus. So this is his signature big band. It's a great record. To hear it for yourself, check out smokesessionsrecords.com. And programming reminder, tomorrow at 11 a.m., we will be joined by Elon Meller, founder of Nouvelle Records. This is a premium subscription-based vinyl service that curates, I guess you call them seasons of these amazing vinyl box sets, showcasing some really creative jazz musicians. Basically, how it works is you become a subscriber to Nouvelle, and every month they send you a premium 180-gram LP to add to your box set. I happen to have one right here. Let's see if we can. This is their Murray Live from Switzerland box set, and they send me, new LPs every month. It's pretty cool. That one is by Gilad Hexelman, a very fine young guitarist. But anyway, he's going to be on the show tomorrow to talk about what's coming up in their latest season. And by the way, starting Monday, May 11th, we are going to be moving to a new time slot. So I guess the brunch is going to become the happy hour or something like that. We're going to start at 5 p.m. We're going to see how that feels. People watching, if that's still kind of an awkward time, you're just getting off work, trying to put dinner together, let us know. We may move it even later. Last call or something like that. But anyway, that'll do it for the sponsors and that little programming update. John, man, I'd love to take it back to the beginning with you, if that's okay. Coming right out of Berkeley, as you mentioned, because you kind of walked into an interesting period with that first group you joined, Chet Baker and Gerry Mulligan. You appeared on one of my favorite records, actually, the Carnegie Hall record, because it has this beautiful ballad. This is a total side note. It has a beautiful ballad on it, Song for Strayhorn, which I almost got married to, by the way. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I got really lucky. I was living in Boston and just playing around, and I dropped out of Berkeley in order to practice. And one of the teachers there, the great Alan Dawson, a great drummer, I had played with him a little bit, and Gerry was friends with him, and Gerry was coming to town to play at the Jazz Workshop. He wanted to augment his existing quartet with vibes and guitar. Okay. So he got me and Dave Samuels, the late Dave Samuels, who was a really good vibraphonist. And but we were kids, we got to play with Gerry, and Gerry went for it. We played 6 nights at the club, and then I was like, okay, kids, see you later. And a month later, I got a call from a producer in New York City that there was a concert at Carnegie Hall that Gerry wanted me to come play in with him. And it was the Gerry Mulligan, Chet Baker reunion at Carnegie Hall. And me and Dave Samuels got to go. Gerry got us on this thing. So I borrowed a car, drove to New York City to Carnegie Hall. And set up and played with, we actually had a rehearsal the day before. So it's the whole time I couldn't even play.
I can only imagine, a young cat, you're like yourself sitting in with this group. And what was so interesting about this time period for Gerry Mulligan and Chet Baker, obviously icons of cool jazz and bebop coming from that school, you could tell that they were just starting to dip their toe. Like, what's this fusion sound everyone's talking about?
Yeah, there was a fusion thing in there, and some of the songs reflect that. You're right. And
so I'm wondering, were looking to the young cats like you? Because I'm trying to think, you were on that album. I think they brought Michael Brecker in for another session with what was that?
That was later. Chet's record, where we both played on Chet's record like 2 years after that. But no, it was just, the concert was Gerry and Chet reunion. And Gerry and Chet had been a big thing. With cool jazz in the 50s, so this was the first time they were getting back together. And Bob James was the musical director, Speak of the Devil.
Yeah.
The great Bob James, and Ron Carter on bass, and Harvey Mason on drums, which was kind of, I think, the CTI rhythm section for
exactly. Yeah.
And Stan Getz also played at the concert. But because of his contract with another record company, he wasn't on the CDs. Yeah.
It was cool to kind of see them. Oh, test the boundaries. Okay, what's this fusion thing? Oh, we'll do a funk.
Nobody ever said anything about fusion. And Gerry was kind of like an outspoken, like, I don't know.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. How'd they take to that? Doing these funk arrangements of Love for Sale and stuff.
Yeah. No, that was on Chet's record.
Now, okay, that's such. Yeah.
But that you're right. We did that. But on the live, the one with Song for Strayhorn, there were
beautiful ballad
tunes on there.
Yeah. Now for Chet's record, was he looking to you young cats who grew up listening to Hendrix and Clapton and hey, what do I do here?
No, it was this was one of these things from the old way of making records. This was in the style of CTI. The record label was it was an A&M. They were making records with a producer, John Snyder, who had been Creed Taylor's assistant, and he was making records very much in the same thing. And he got, it was arranged by, what's his name, the great arranger man who did all the dates for CTI and Wes Montgomery and everything. Is this a senior moment?
Maybe. Well, I'm having a youthful moment too. I can't even remember.
Arranged. Chet just showed up.
Oh wow!
And read the music like everybody else.
See.
It was his date, and he could say yay or nay. But it was really put together by Don Sebesky, the great.
There it is. Yeah. There it is.
That was Tony Williams, Ron Carter,
right.
Richie Byron played keyboards, Mike Brecker.
Yeah, young Mike Brecker. Playing with Chet. I imagine things worked a little bit differently for those Miles Davis recording dates.
Well, that was later on. That was really Miles's band. We were in Miles's group.
Yeah, man.
And he went in the studio whenever he wanted to and tried a couple of tunes and stuff. Yeah.
What was interesting about your stint with Miles too was also kind of a transitional period, because Star People still kind of had that Bitches Brew flavor of like the power fusion, that Wild Child. You get 700 drummers out there, and then you switch to Decoy, and it's a different vibe. Cynthia, the drum program drums. Although Al Foster, I think, was playing on that record.
But sometimes they did stuff with both program drums and Al.
Right.
Which Al didn't like. I remember that.
Right. Was, again, I imagine for those recording sessions, it was much more Miles was just telling everybody, this is how it's going to happen.
Miles ran the show.
Miles ran the show. Was he as intimidating a figure as, the stories may suggest?
More intimidating.
Do you remember the first time meeting him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was playing with Dave Liebman at a club called 7th Avenue South, and Miles came in the club. And here we are with our kind of modern jazz group, and it was Liebman, incredible player, and I think we were playing one of those gigs to like 20 people, and then comes Miles in this fur coat with an entourage with these beautiful women who looked like fashion models,
right?
Like 3 of them, and a couple of guys that were like bodyguards. Miles was a rock star,
Yeah, man.
And he was in his retirement period. And he came and he sat in the back. And Dave, after the set, said, I'm going to introduce you to Miles. And he went up to Miles with me and he said, Miles, because David played in Miles's band earlier in the 70s. And he said, here's my guitar player, John. And Miles said, you sound good. And I said, oh, Miles, that's so great. Thank you so much. You're my idol. I really, and he goes, shut the fuck up. So I met Miles. And then I joined his group a couple years later. I don't even know if he remembered me, but Bill Evans, a saxophonist, got me in the band. And Miles was very intimidating, but also really forthcoming with his ideas about music, and would share it with us, and was really supportive of musicians that he liked, really supportive. And was harsh on himself too. Like, I couldn't play shit tonight. Trying to get my stuff together, because he was the real deal,
Absolutely. One of my favorite meeting Miles stories comes from Sammy Figueroa, the percussionist, who I think was with Tutu. And I was speaking to Sammy, and I think Sammy was into boxing or something like that. And Miles obviously was a big boxing fan. So, one rehearsal or something, or when they're about to meet, Miles calls, "Hey, Sammy, come over here." Sammy walks over. Miles just socks him in the stomach. Just wow, right in the stomach.
No, Miles would just hit you all the time.
Yeah. And Sammy hit him back. Boom. And he has a pretty good right hook. So after that, Miles was like, "Okay, man, I think we're good. We're on the same page."
Miles, I think he wanted people to hit him back. I never hit him back.
Well, you did pretty good regardless.
I hung in.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm also very interested in your two guitar leader groups because it's a setting you thrive in. But I imagine, there you go. There's a very Milesian response there. Just
done.
There you go. I imagine it's a tricky situation, because sonically guitar takes up a lot of space and you're doing your best to leave room for the other player. You don't want to step on any toes. And you do it so well. Come to think of it, one of my favorite double leader albums of the same instrument together is Sonny Me Talk. This one with Sonny Rollins and Coleman Hawkins?
Oh yeah. Record, yeah.
Oh man, it is because it's Sonny Rollins. For people who don't know, it's Sonny Rollins and Coleman Hawkins. Sonny, it was recorded in the 60s, so Sonny was in his prime, the top of the game. Coleman Hawkins, again, the ideas were there, but it was toward the end of his life, so the chops may not have been,
not Hawk's greatest days.
Exactly. But what's so fascinating is you can hear Sonny's calculation of, all right, if I just play like Sonny Rollins right now, I'm going to smother Hawk, who's my hero. I'm going to totally. So he decides to go this totally avant-garde, out in left field, kind of, it gets weird for Sonny. I've never heard him that avant-garde.
That was that free jazz period, and Sonny was definitely experimenting with that. But it's funny, yeah.
And it's because I think it was out of respect for Hawk. Like, I've got to do something so different so Hawk can really do his thing and shine. Yeah, and
probably did want to sound different from Hawk.
Different, right?
Didn't want to sound like he was coming out of Hawk.
Exactly. So I thought that was just a real cool way to approach it. It takes me immediately, to your album with Pat Metheny because, again, two very individualized styles. So I want to ask you to do something which may be impossible here, but can you describe Pat's style and how you kind of approach working with it on that album?
I can't describe Pat's style, but as dissimilar as we are, we also just kind of came up in the same period, definitely.
Yeah, and we should mention the album is "I Can See Your House from Here." That was the album you did with him.
Yep. And no, but Pat, I met back in the Berkeley days in Boston. He came up there too, and we used to play some together and talk about jazz and what we liked and about guitar playing and everything. And so we stayed in touch, and he made it big, and I was out there playing and making records and stuff, and I always wanted to try a two guitar thing with him. And our similarity is even that I was making records like with Dennis Chambers and funky records, and Pat was the Pat Metheny group, which is the sound,
Yep.
And but our actual modern jazz guitar playing, we both were digging the same stuff, and we like free jazz, and we like swinging and trying to play tunes and adventurous, jazz. We like Sonny,
Yeah.
and we shared that, so we were able to find a way to play together on that record. It was no problem, and we're actually finding similar ways. And the thing is, Pat's a great musician and just wants to make the group sound good. The idea of a cutting contest, you can be like that, wanting to play as good as you can and to come out the winner, but you also realize what good music needs is supporting each other.
Right.
And that's the way we were,
And and that communication, that support is also thrown into high relief on the stuff that you did with John Abercrombie, where a lot of that stuff is you and him, just the duo.
Oh, right. We did that record, and we wanted to do some duets because we've been playing at John's place. John was very great to me when I first came to New York. He was so nice, man. And maybe you met him, but he was the sweetest man, and he. He had already been on the scene and making records and playing with all this great stuff.
Yeah.
And he was so nice to me. And we used to play at his house and just the two of us. So when we made that record, we thought we could do some of the tunes like that.
Solar, yeah, and it's fascinating. Listen, just to hear how, again, everything fits together. And I imagine it must have been
I
instinctive.
think, Brian, I think two guitars works great together. Like,
yeah,
for me, with piano, sometimes it's like the timbers are so similar.
yeah,
They cancel each other out. The piano can actually waste the guitar, which in a live situation, you just turn your amp up. But I mean, if you're listening to it on a recording, but two guitars, if it's sensitive players, work so well together.
totally. And especially because you can convey a lot of tone through the guitar. Whether just there's tone that just comes through the fingers. You can't do anything about it. That's just the way your hands sound. And then there's personal taste with obviously amplifier settings. And you and John had it's just a great match for each other. And like I say, this instinctive conversation of there was no over talking when he went down to the bass, you kind of took it up high. It's that album is Solar, right? Yeah,
Solar, yes.
Yeah. And I should mention before we carry on any further, I want to kind of wrap talking about some recent stuff from yours. But if anybody's watching out there on Facebook, if you have a question for John, feel free to ask away. We might be able to get to it on air, or just say hello. Here's I like this username, Jocko Scofield 5150. He says, "Hello, John. Thanks for everything you do." Have you ever played with Jocko and Tailspin?
I met Jocko way back in the 70s, and we didn't play much together. There's one thing that keeps coming up on YouTube of us playing with Kenwood Denard, but I knew him, man. Wow. And I played with him a little bit, but he was a superstar before I knew it. I met him, and then all of a sudden, his
career just kind of took off. Yeah, man. I kind of wanted to ask about your recent stuff, Country for Old Men, which was an album that I loved. And really a testament to your love of country, or to use a Blues Brothers term, both kinds of music, country and Western. What's your history with country? Have you been listening to that, since you were a kid?
I started out as a guitar player as a young kid in the 60s, in this period when the kind of hippie period, people were into all kinds of music. You got to remember, in your record collection, like my sister was older than me and went to college and was in that period, in 1966, she would have a Coltrane record and a Ravi Shankar record. Mm-hmm. And country was part of that, bluegrass and roots music, and the kind of Appalachian old music. And then there was Merle Haggard and the Strangers. Merle Travis is great too.
Right.
And bands like that were kind of more current and electric. Buck Owens and the Buckaroos were incredible. But they were current in the 60s. Right. And to be a guitar player, you couldn't be at least aware of that, which is sort of where I was at. I mean, I started off with folk and everything, and country was kind of part of that.
Absolutely. Were you surprised at all for the Grammy win for that?
Who knew? I mean, it was nice that it came around.
Yeah.
I am country, but on that record, we took country tunes and mostly turned them into jazz.
Exactly.
But some of the tunes we played kind of straight country.
Exactly, which is, there's a lot of really great overlap that can spring from where country meets jazz. I think a lot of people poo-poo it, they don't want to have anything to do with the country, but there's a lot of fascinating things that can come from that. And I believe Merle Haggard, if I'm not mistaken, one of the few country artists to grace the cover of Downbeat magazine back in the day.
I think, he always liked jazz. He said, there was this country swing thing.
The Chet Atkins thing, yeah.
And before that, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, they were doing swing music, but it was stone country. So these guys, we'd blown solos, it sounded like modern jazz, Count Basie or whatever.
Right.
And there's always been a crossover in America with, and the political thing is something else, but you know what? It crosses over. We all cross over into our musics. And from the very beginning of all this music, everybody has affected each other,
Totally. And it's cool to see love reciprocated from the other side, like your stuff with Government Mule. They're not a country band per se, but you know, those are members of the Allman Brothers band.
Man, they're not a country band, but they are country.
Yeah, I can imagine. How did that collaboration come together?
Haynes,
Okay.
Who had been in the Allman Brothers. I met him years ago, and Warren is just a real eclectic musician. He loves all kinds of music, and he dug me, and we became friends. And then after knowing him for a while, he asked me to do some gigs with him, record with him.
That was you guys made musical magic too there, because you have the Allman Brothers, who were just musically were an awesome group, such energy, you know. And then a Sco solo will come on, and it's just funky with the wah pedal. It's a great listen too, man. Another one of my favorite records of yours, and we'll end with this, is the kind of star-studded tribute to Ray Charles. Tell me about his influence on your music. For me, I'm almost feel guilty when I forget about how good he was, and I go back and listen. I say I should be listening to his stuff every day because it's just that good.
Well, you know, Ray Charles, I think he just kind of wrote the book on the musicians. When I started to play in band when I was really young, you know, just little rock bands, the older guys. So like here I am, and like when I'm 13 and stuff, if some kid is 18, they were around learning how to play in the 50s when Ray Charles was the whole thing for musicians, you know. And this was rhythm and blues music that was mixed with jazz. And then he stuck country western. He was the guy who did the fusion of country western and R&B. And yeah, there's just so much great music, and his playing too. You know, I mean, nobody played piano like that. The way he could play the blues, his singing is absolutely. I don't know how to describe it, but anybody who likes music will love Ray Charles. That's just the way it is.
Like you said before, if you have ears, you're going to like Ray Charles. Yeah. And that album, you know, John Mayer, you got in there, and Aaron Neville, I think.
Yeah,
and
that was.
That must have been a fun project for everybody.
Well, yeah,
you know?
It was Steve Jordan who produced it, the great drummer Steve Jordan.
Sure. Yeah.
Who then went on to produce Mayer, some of
and the Mayer Trio stuff, right?
And so Steve got Mayer in there. I didn't know him, and Steve really helped me put that together. He's a great artist in his own right, Steve Jordan.
Were you surprised by John Mayer's playing? Like, wow, man!
I heard him. I knew he could play.
He's got serious guitar chops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, John, we're about to wrap up here. I believe there's a question out there from internet land. Okay. Daniel wants to know, one of my favorite discs is Blood on the Floor by the great Mark Anthony Turnage. What was it like working in that world where jazz meets contemporary music?
Daniel, I'm so glad that you've heard that record. Sometimes I think people aren't aware of that. Mark Anthony Turnage is a great contemporary orchestral, whatever you call it, classical composer from London. And he heard me somewhere back in the 90s, got in touch with me. He said, I'm doing this piece with orchestra, and I'd like to include a jazz rhythm section and you as a soloist. And it's this piece, Blood on the Floor. And he sent me Junior Addict, which was just a rehearsal of that part of the piece. It's called Junior Addict. And I'm just blown away. And it was one of the most beautiful pieces of music I'd heard, and very much something that I could relate to musically. And then I got to record with that, and he sent me the music. And it was so hard. I had to practice it forever, man. I'd never, played music that difficult, and to work with a conductor. And we did it with the Ensemble Modern, this incredible group in Cologne, Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany, sorry. And it was one of the great experiences I've had. And Mark and I have been friends ever since. We did a record course called Scorched, where Mark took all my pieces and rearranged them for orchestra. And I played along with that, and that was a great highlight for me. And he's written some new music that we're going to get to that uses me as a improviser along with orchestra. I'm so glad that you mentioned Mark Anthony Turnage. He's a great musical mind.
Absolutely. And that's a great question to kind of end on is, what have you been working on? Anything in the works during this period? Anything listeners can keep an ear out for?
I'm not sure what my next thing is. I do so many things, and I'm practicing guitar, learning, writing, all that stuff. And I hope to put a band together and play a bunch of kind of Americana music and come out on the road when it opens up, and we call it Yankee Go Home. And, different. I mean, the set list that we put together is really varied with, rock tunes, basically, from my youth, but we jazz them up and got some great musicians. John Coward is going to play keyboards.
Awesome.
Vicente Archer on acoustic bass. Great drummer Tony Leone, who played with the Chris Robinson Brotherhood and Phil Lesh and Friends and things like that. And I'm looking forward to taking that music and arranging it and see what we can do with it.
Us too, man, and hopefully sooner than later. But John, hey, man, it was great talking to you. We should mention again, the album Swallowtails is coming out June 5th. There it is on ECM Records. You can stream the single now. Go buy a copy. It's really, really good. And I certainly vouch for it. John, we appreciate it. Hey, if people wanted to follow along, trying to check in on you, see what's going on, what's the best place to do that?
JohnScofield.com.
JohnScofield.com. Right on, man. John, I know you're a busy man, got things to do, screens to chat with, but we appreciate you taking a minute to come join us for brunch, man. This was awesome.
It was great to talk, Brian. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. See you later, John. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Be well. Bye. All right. Wow. Always a treat to talk with the amazing John Scofield. Again, that album is Swallowtails, coming out on ECM Records June 5th. Go listen to the tunes that are out there on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music right now, and then go buy the album when it comes out. It is really, really good. So programming note, again, tomorrow we're going to be chatting with Nouvelle Records' Elon Mailer about this very cool subscription vinyl service. And then Friday, May 8th, we are going to be wrapping up the week with Jay Beckenstein of Spyro Gyra. And just to remind you, come May 11th, that Monday, we're going to be moving into our later time slot, trying things out there. And we're going to be kicking off that week with Nick and Chris from Go Go Penguin. A little later in the week, we'll also be talking to Eric Alexander. Michael Imperioli of The Sopranos is going to be joining us on Wednesday the 13th. Not only is he a great actor, but he's a huge jazz fan. So we're going to be talking to him about that. Ricky Riccardi, who is the curator of the Louis Armstrong House Museum in Queens. He's going to be walking us through this new virtual exhibit that they've got going on. If you like your just skin is crawling to get out of the house, why not take a virtual tour of the Louis Armstrong House Museum? And then wrapping up next week, the 15th, with Kat Edmondson. So, and we might be talking to Bobby Watson that day as well. Anyway, you're going to want to tune in for that. In the meantime, check out jazziz.com for all of the great content we've got out for you right now. As I mentioned, our May 2020 digital issue is available now. It's for subscribers only. A lot of great interviews in there, like with the aforementioned Bob James, and Boney James. How about that? 2 James for the price of 1. Right now, you can subscribe to Jazziz to unlock all of this digital content for just 99 cents per month for 3 months. That'll get you unlimited online access to read all these great stories for subscribers only. Plus, we'll enroll you to receive our print issue when it comes out in June 2020. That's our summer issue. It is dedicated to fusion. Got a nice long interview with Chick Corea in there. So you sign up for 99 cents for 3 months. You get a complimentary print issue. Hey, you're a Jazziz member. What's not to love? Also, independent artists or friends of independent artists, check out our Inside Track program. People ask me all the time, hey, how can I get my album reviewed by Jazziz editors? What do? I send a physical copy? You guys even checking the mail anymore? The best thing you could do is upload it to the Inside Track program. This is a very easy to program to use. You just send us all the info about your album, the album cover, the personnel, the track listing. You could send us a link to Bandcamp or SoundCloud. It comes directly to my inbox. It comes directly to other editors' inboxes. We listen to everyone, and you never know. You could wind up on a Song of the Day post on our homepage, in a weekly Discover playlist, in the pages of Jazziz magazine, or on this very podcast. You never know. But the first step is to submit via that Inside Track program. All right, that'll do it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation conversation with John Scofield. All of these conversations are archived on our website and on our YouTube page, and occasionally we release them as podcasts, which you can listen to on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcast. Check them out there. I'm Brian Zimmerman, digital content editor of Jazziz Magazine. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. with Elon Miller. So long, folks.